Thank you, Chair. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I thank the member quite carefully for bringing this debate, and I thank Ellie for all her work, and Hugh and others who really are pulling very hard on this issue. So many thanks indeed. I want to try and take this debate a little bit broader in two directions. One is starting with, well, frankly, my sister, Georgie, who also has a GBM, a glioblastoma, and was diagnosed 2.5 years ago, and has been incredibly brave and incredibly determined, working with the Honourable Member for Mitcham and Morden to really try and get more brain cancer justice, and with Ellie, and driving that debate. But, and that also applies to so many people in my constituency of Witney, which also have got, yes, brain tumours, but also tumours of all sorts of different types of cancers. And I really think we ought to be considering two things here. One is, and I really ask the Minister to consider this, to be taking this tumour tissue freezing as standard to all cancerous tumour tissues, not just brain, because I think it is inequitable just to be focusing on, however close it is to my heart, just on brain. I think it has to be trying to get all tumour tissues frozen as standard, and the economies of scale of doing that obviously make sense. So that would be one thing. The other thing is to really look at, once we've stored that tissue, is about how we have access to that tissue and how we have equitable and public health-oriented access to the tissue, which we are, as a country, massively failing on. So I'm looking and asking the Minister to consider reforming the Health Tissue Act 2004, which could be broadened as to what's legally permitted in research contexts. And what that would do would have explicit legal pathways for retrospective clinical samples. That would allow clinical tissue, biopsies, diagnostic archives to be routinely made available for public health research under clear safeguards without separate project consent. That's one. Secondly, simplify requirements for de-identified tissues. Clarify that truly anonymised, non-identifiable samples can be used without consent or HTA, Health Tissue Act, licence for a wider range of research, not just narrowly defined exceptions. Thirdly, convert licences to broader authorisations. Instead of licence for each tissue bank, allow accredited biobanks to supply samples under nationally recognised frameworks. And fourthly, rework DNA analysis rules. Reduce barriers for genomic public health research by redefining or narrowing the offence of having tissue for DNA analysis, provided strong data protection is ensured. So that's one big chunk. The second big chunk is, and there are only two, is that I'm also asking that we reform the HTA, the Human Tissue Act 2004, to apply a similar default system that we now use nationally for organ donation for tumour tissue data. To do this, Parliament would need to amend the HTA 2004 to introduce deemed consent regime for residual tumour tissue and derived data. This would be limited to public interest cancer research with a statutory and simple opt-out, strict purpose limits, and enhanced oversight by the Human Tissue Authority. The model would mirror the Organ Donation Deemed Consent Act 2019, but apply just to data derived primarily from tumour tissue. So in plain English, what does that mean? It means that we've got something that works for organ donations, yeah? And that is saving lives day in, day out. That means that if any of us die, our organs are taken, and then our next of kin can opt out if they choose. The great majority of people do not opt out. That means that there's been many more organs available, and that has saved lives. Frankly, tumour tissue, somebody may want to, dispose of their tumour tissue, but the great majority of us do not, we would want that used for public health and public science. So having that as an automatic, yes.
Sorry to stop. I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and sorry to stop you mid-flow, which I think is a really, really interesting concept. I'll just draw my honourable friend's attention to the BBC article today, which talks about using centuries-old samples of tumours from bowel cancer in order to work out why there is such a massive increase in bowel cancer amongst young people. So surely this is a step forward, and I don't understand the science on it, but surely this is a step forward for our research as well.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for that intervention, and that speaks to the point, because of course those people have been dead many centuries, but we do believe it's worth being able to access that information, and at the moment that information is not accessible in most cases. So that's something that we really want to change. And I look over at Denmark's registry-first legal architecture with mandatory health registries covering cancer diagnoses, pathology, genomics and treatment and outcomes. And the Danish Cancer Registry automatically records tumour data, covers the entire population and is used for research, oversight and quality improvement. Participation is automatic with opt-outs rather than consent-based. Our government is seeking to rapidly expand our national genomics capabilities, and I applaud the government for that. But without far better, more sensible access to the base tissue with appropriate safeguards, then there is no genomics-based population-wide health service. Thank you.